Explosions of violet and amber tore through the void as Sector 42's nebulae rippled violently, a gravitational anomaly tearing at the fabric of space. It was a region shrouded in legend, avoided by most of the Galactic Coalition due to the strange disappearances and sensor anomalies reported over centuries. But the Coalition's fleet command had little choice now. The war against the Arcanid swarm was going poorly, and every possible avenue for reinforcements or resources had to be explored. Still, no one expected what they found. Captain Lysara Teln watched from the bridge of her frigate, the Resolute Dawn, as the anomaly rippled on her sensors. A massive gravitational disturbance, stable yet unnatural, hovered at the edge of the nebula, its sheer intensity distorting the surrounding starlight. Coalition intelligence had dismissed it as a rogue black hole for decades. But now, as the fleet edged closer, the truth was undeniable. Visual confirmation, her sensor officer announced, his voice tight with disbelief. On the main view screen, the swirling gases parted, revealing the impossible. It was a ship, no, a fortress, a supercarrier of unprecedented scale. Its angular design shimmered faintly, a soft hum emanating from its energy field that seemed to vibrate through the surrounding void. The vessel dwarfed anything in the Coalition's fleet, its sleek, angular design shimmering with a faint glow of ancient energy shielding, exuding an aura of power that seemed to press against the void itself. But what truly took Captain Teln's breath away was the insignia emblazoned on its hull, the unmistakable emblem of Earth's United Nations, long thought extinct. "Is that?" Lysara whispered, leaning forward, her pale blue skin paling further. Her first officer, a grizzled veteran named Kale, nodded grimly. "Humanity's mark," he confirmed. "But, it's been centuries since humanity vanished. That ship shouldn't exist." A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Humanity's disappearance was one of the great mysteries of the galaxy. Once considered the most unpredictable and resourceful members of the Coalition, the humans had vanished almost 2 centuries ago, leaving behind ruins, scattered outposts, and unanswered questions. "Open a channel," Lysara ordered. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Let's see if anyone, or anything, is aboard." Static filled the bridge as the communications officer adjusted frequencies. The hum of machinery was punctuated by the occasional nervous cough or whispered murmur from the crew, their tension palpable as they waited for a response. Then, like a ghost from the past, a voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the UNS Eternity's Wrath. Identify yourselves." The voice was calm, commanding, and unmistakably human. The Coalition's delegation approached the Eternity's Wrath cautiously, their small shuttle dwarfed by the colossal vessel. Captain Teln and her team boarded the ancient supercarrier under heavy escort, their senses assaulted by the eerie blend of pristine technology and the palpable weight of history. Captain Ward stood waiting in the docking bay, flanked by what appeared to be human soldiers clad in advanced combat armor. His presence was commanding, his dark eyes sharp with intellect and suspicion. "You've come far," he said, his tone measured but not unkind. "I'd like to say it's a pleasure to see the Coalition again, but I suspect this isn't a social call." Lysara stepped forward, offering a formal nod. "Captain Ward, your ship is a marvel. We thought humanity lost. Your reappearance raises questions, and hopes." Ward's expression remained neutral. "Humanity's story is a complicated one, Captain Teln. But suffice it to say we've been preparing." "Preparing for what?" Kale interjected, his tone laced with suspicion. "The Arcanid swarm is tearing through our defenses. If humanity has been hiding a weapon of this magnitude, why wait until now?" Ward's gaze darkened, his jaw tightening as he spoke. "Because we were betrayed." His tone carried the weight of centuries, each word edged with a simmering anger barely contained, and his eyes gleamed with a mixture of pain, defiance, and unshakable purpose. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Lysara's mind raced with the implications. Betrayed? By whom? And what had humanity endured during their centuries-long absence? As the delegation was escorted deeper into the Eternity's Wrath, the scale of the supercarrier became increasingly apparent. Massive corridors lined with dormant drones and automated defenses spoke to the ship's formidable power. The air was tinged with a metallic tang, and every footstep seemed to echo endlessly, amplifying the profound silence. The dim lighting cast long shadows, and an eerie silence filled the space, broken only by the faint hum of distant machinery, creating an atmosphere of both awe and unease. Yet it was the stories etched into its walls that struck Lysara the most. Murals of Earth's history, its triumphs and tragedies, painted a picture of a species that had endured against impossible odds. "The swarm isn't your only enemy," Ward said as they entered the command center. The room was a marvel of advanced technology, with holographic displays projecting three-dimensional maps of the galaxy and data streams that shimmered in midair. A massive central console pulsed faintly with energy, while the walls, lined with intricate conduits and glowing nodes, radiated a cold, functional beauty. It was a space that commanded respect and fear. Holographic displays illuminated the room, showing not only the Arcanid front but also Coalition space. "You've grown complacent. The Coalition's bureaucracy has blinded you to threats that fester within." Kale bristled. "And humanity's solution is to return as some kind of galactic arbiter?" Ward's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not arbiter. Catalyst. The Coalition was founded on unity, but unity requires strength. Humanity hasn't returned to conquer. We're here to ensure survival." Lysara's gaze lingered on the holograms. She wanted to argue, to push back against Ward's critique, but the data was damning. The Coalition's fleets were stretched thin, its allies fractured by internal disputes. The swarm's advance was only the most visible symptom of a deeper rot. "What are you proposing?" she asked finally. Ward's expression hardened. "An alliance. Humanity's resources, technology, and strategic expertise in exchange for Coalition support. Together we can end the swarm and rebuild something stronger." The delegation returned to the Resolute Dawn with much to consider. Ward's offer was bold, but it was also fraught with risk. Trusting a species that had vanished for centuries, harboring secrets and grudges, would not sit well with the Coalition's leadership. But as Lysara stared out at the hulking silhouette of the Eternity's Wrath, its faintly glowing hull a stark reminder of its latent power, she couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's return was no coincidence. It was an inevitability. The galaxy was at a tipping point, and the decisions made in the coming days would shape its future for generations. "Prepare a secure channel to Fleet Command," she ordered. "They need to hear this firsthand." As her crew moved to comply, Lysara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Humanity's return was a mystery, a challenge, and perhaps a salvation. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The Eternity's Wrath loomed silently in the void, a relic of the past and a harbinger of what was to come. Deep within its corridors, Captain Ward watched as his crew prepared for the battles ahead. His gaze hardened as he spoke to himself, his voice low but resolute. "They're not ready for what's coming. But they'll have no choice but to rise to the challenge when the tide turns." The Coalition's leaders gathered in Fleet Command's Grand Strategy Chamber, a sprawling room filled with holographic displays that cast shifting hues of blue and green across the polished walls. The distant hum of quantum processors harmonized with the faint rustle of tense movements, as the air seemed to vibrate with unspoken anxieties. The news of the Eternity's Wrath had sent shockwaves through the Coalition's political and military spheres, dividing opinions across species and factions. Representatives from all major powers were present, their forms as diverse as their worlds. High Commander Vrel, a towering insectoid Zorathian with an iridescent carapace, slammed a clawed appendage onto the polished table. "This is an outrage." Vrel's mandibles flared wide, his iridescent carapace reflecting flashes of light from the holograms. His voice buzzed with a sharp edge, underscoring his fury. Humanity vanished centuries ago, abandoning the Coalition without warning, and now they dare to return with demands? Now they return with a weapon of unimaginable power, demanding an alliance? How can we trust them? From across the table, Minister Orana of the aquatic Drizali floated serenely in her suspended water sphere. Her voice, melodic and measured, rippled through the chamber. "And yet, Commander, their return coincides with our greatest hour of need. The Arcanid swarm has pushed our fleets to the brink. Can we afford to spurn an ally with the resources to tip the balance?" The room erupted into debate, voices overlapping in a cacophony of frustration and desperation. Admiral Threx of the Avarian Dominion raised a winged arm, his voice cutting through the noise. "Enough. The decision is not ours alone. We need to hear from those who made contact with the humans. Captain Teln, you have the floor." All eyes turned to Lysara, who stood at the chamber's center, the weight of the Coalition's future pressing heavily on her shoulders. She activated the holographic interface, projecting the data she had collected aboard the Eternity's Wrath. The image of the Supercarrier filled the chamber, its sheer size eliciting murmurs of awe. "High Commander, Minister, esteemed representatives," Lysara began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. What we witnessed aboard the Eternity's Wrath was both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. Humanity has returned with advanced technology and a determination forged in centuries of isolation. Captain Ward's proposal is clear: an alliance to defeat the swarm and rebuild the coalition. Vrel's mandibles clicked irritably. And what assurances do we have that their intentions are genuine? They speak of betrayal. How do we know they do not seek vengeance under the guise of cooperation? Their grievances are legitimate, Lysara replied, her tone firm. But so is their offer. The Eternity's Wrath possesses capabilities that could turn the tide of this war. Their technology surpasses anything we've seen, and their strategic insights could be invaluable. Humanity's return is a gamble, yes, but one we may have to take. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed her words. Orana's soothing voice broke the tension. Captain Teln, what is your personal assessment of Captain Ward and his crew? Can we trust them? Lysara hesitated, her mind racing as she weighed the implications of her response. The memory of Captain Ward's unwavering gaze and the haunting stories etched into the Supercarrier's walls resurfaced, a stark reminder of humanity's scars. She drew a steadying breath, choosing her words carefully. Captain Ward is a man burdened by the weight of his species' history. His pain and anger are evident, but so is his resolve. I believe he truly seeks to ensure the survival of the galaxy, not just humanity. However, trust must be built. That will take time. While the coalition deliberated, the Eternity's Wrath remained a silent sentinel in Sector 42. On board, Ward convened with his senior officers in the war room. The space was dominated by a massive tactical display, its holographic interface pulsing with data from across the galaxy. Officers exchanged tense glances, their movements precise yet strained, while the air carried the faint hum of machinery and the weight of unspoken urgency. What's the latest from the Arcanid front? Ward asked, his voice clipped and efficient. Commander Elena Morozova, the ship's tactical officer, gestured to the display. The swarm is advancing faster than predicted. Coalition defenses are crumbling in the Helios cluster. If they lose that region, the swarm will have a direct path to Concordia Prime. Ward's expression hardened. And the coalition's response? Disorganized and reactive, Morozova replied. Their fleets lack coordination, and their command structure is bogged down by political infighting. Ward leaned over the console, his jaw set. Typical. They're scrambling while the enemy tightens the noose. We can't afford to wait for them to get their act together. We need to act now. Chief Engineer Malik, a wiry man with a sharp mind, chimed in. If we're going to make a move, we'll need to test the fleet's readiness. The Eternity's Wrath can't win this war alone. Ward nodded. Agreed. Begin simulations and readiness drills immediately. I want every system optimized and every pilot prepared. If the coalition approves the alliance, we'll need to hit the ground running. Back at Fleet Command, the debate raged on. Vrel continued to voice his objections, while Orana and Threx argued for collaboration. The impasse was broken by Admiral Kashar, a pragmatic Ralphisian with a reputation for cutting through bureaucracy. We're out of options, Kashar said bluntly. The swarm won't wait for us to resolve our differences. If humanity is offering their aid, we'd be fools to refuse it. But we must proceed with caution. A joint operation will test their intentions and their capabilities. Lysara nodded. A joint operation is a sound proposal. Captain Ward's crew is ready. If we coordinate with their forces, we can strike a decisive blow against the swarm in the Helios cluster. The chamber erupted into a flurry of activity as representatives debated the logistics. Finally Vrel relented, his tone grudging. Very well, Vrel said, his mandibles clicking in reluctant acceptance. His tone carried a sharp edge of distrust, and his iridescent eyes narrowed. Let the humans prove their worth. But mark my words, if this alliance falters, the consequences will be on your heads. Lysara met his gaze, unflinching. Then let us ensure it doesn't. Hours later, aboard the Eternity's Wrath, Ward received the coalition's response. His senior officers gathered around him as he read the transmission. They've agreed to a joint operation, Ward announced. The Helios cluster will be our proving ground. This is our chance to show them what humanity is capable of. Morozova smirked. About time they let us off the leash. Ward's expression remained serious. This isn't just about proving ourselves. It's about survival, ours and theirs. Let's get to work. As his officers dispersed, Ward remained in the war room, staring at the holographic map of the Helios cluster. The display glowed faintly, outlining critical choke points and projected swarm advances. His mind churned through possibilities, weighing the risks and calculating the cost of each maneuver. The room was quiet now, save for the steady pulse of the map's interface, a rhythmic reminder of the urgency bearing down on them. Humanity's long absence had built doubt, but this mission would forge a new legacy, or confirm every fear. The stakes were higher than ever, but humanity had waited long enough. It was time to take the first step toward reclaiming their place in the galaxy. The Eternity's wrath surged forward, its immense engines emitting a low, resonant hum that reverberated through its structure as it cut through the shimmering depths of the Helios cluster. The surrounding starlight distorted faintly around the massive vessel, a testament to its sheer power. Escort ships from the Coalition's fleet flanked its sides, a motley assortment of vessels representing the galaxy's diverse species. The operation's objective was clear: retake the Helios cluster's critical outposts and establish a foothold against the swarm's relentless advance. But everyone aboard knew that this was more than a battle, it was humanity's proving ground. In the ship's war room, Captain Ward studied the tactical display with sharp focus. "What's the swarm's latest movement?" he asked, his voice cutting through the room's hum of activity. Commander Morozova pointed to a series of red blips swarming around a central cluster. "The Arcanids have reinforced their position around Outpost Helios 7. Intel indicates heavy anti-ship emplacements armed with ion disruptors and plasma turrets, along with multiple carrier-class vessels. They're expecting us, and their defenses are optimized to repel prolonged assaults." Ward's jaw tightened. "And their weak points?" Chief Engineer Malik adjusted the holographic interface, highlighting gaps in the swarm's formation. "Their perimeter defense grid is formidable, but it's designed to counter direct assaults. A coordinated strike through these vectors could disrupt their network and open a path for the Coalition's forces." Ward nodded. "Good. Prepare the strike teams and coordinate with the Coalition fleet. Timing will be everything." Hours later, the battle commenced. The Helios cluster erupted into chaos, the asteroid fields alive with streaks of plasma bolts that illuminated jagged rocks, while the deafening staccato of explosions punctuated the void with relentless ferocity. Ships darted and spun, their hulls glinting in the light of each detonation, while the void echoed with the muffled thuds of distant impacts. The Eternity's wrath unleashed its full arsenal, precision strikes dismantling swarm carriers and their defensive emplacements. Coalition ships, inspired by humanity's leadership, executed daring maneuvers that had once been considered reckless. "Enemy carrier destroyed," came a jubilant cry from the bridge. Ward barely acknowledged the victory, his attention fixed on the larger picture. Shift focus to Helios 7's command center. "We take that and the swarm loses its coordination." The Coalition's fleet pressed forward, capitalizing on the opening created by the Eternity's wrath. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, weaving through enemy fire to deliver precision strikes. Aboard one of the Coalition's frigates, Captain Lasara Teln directed her crew with newfound confidence, her trust in humanity's tactics growing with every successful maneuver. Amid the chaos, a boarding team launched from the Eternity's wrath. Comprised of human soldiers and Coalition specialists, the team's mission was to infiltrate Helios 7's command center and disable its control systems. The air in the dropship was heavy with anticipation, every soldier silently steeling themselves for the chaos ahead. Leading the charge was Lieutenant Ramirez, a veteran with a sharp mind and an unshakable resolve. As their dropship breached the station's outer defenses, Ramirez addressed his team. "Listen up. The swarm will throw everything they have at us. Stick to the plan, cover your sectors, and trust your training. We've got one shot at this." The team stormed the station, their movements precise and calculated. The corridors were a nightmare of flickering lights that cast eerie shadows, alien biomechanical structures pulsating with faint energy, and the haunting chitter of swarm drones reverberating like an ominous chorus. Coalition specialists provided covering fire while human soldiers utilized experimental breaching equipment to overcome the swarm's defenses. "Ramirez, we've got a lock on the command node," came a report over the comms. "Good. Plant the charges and prepare for extraction," Ramirez replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. As the team worked, a horde of swarm drones descended upon their position. The firefight that ensued was brutal, with the team's cohesion and training the only things keeping them alive. Ramirez fought like a man possessed, his every movement precise as he barked orders and fired relentlessly, rallying his team with unwavering determination and grit to ensure their mission's success. "Charges are set," a Coalition specialist shouted. "Move," Ramirez ordered. The team sprinted toward their extraction point, explosions ripping through the station behind them. Their drop ship barely cleared the station before it erupted in a chain reaction, leaving the swarm's command network in ruins. Back aboard the Eternity's Wrath, Ward and his officers monitored the battle's progress. When news of the boarding team's success came through, a wave of relief swept the room. But Ward's expression remained stoic. "This isn't over yet," he said. "The swarm will regroup. We need to press our advantage and secure the remaining outposts before they recover." Commander Morozova stepped forward. "Our forces are stretched thin. We'll need the coalition to commit more ships if we're going to hold the Helios cluster." Ward's gaze hardened. Then it's time they saw what's at stake. "Prepare a broadcast to Fleet Command. They need to understand that this is their fight too." The transmission was stark and unflinching. Ward stood before the camera, his silhouette framed by the viewport, where wreckage from destroyed swarm ships drifted eerily among the stars, a silent testament to the battle's ferocity. His words were measured but powerful, carrying the weight of hard-fought battles and the urgency of impending peril. "To the leaders of the coalition, today we struck a blow against the swarm. But this victory came at a cost, and it's only the beginning. The Helios cluster is the key to our survival. If we falter here, the swarm will not stop until they've consumed everything. Humanity has returned not as conquerors but as allies. Together we can defeat this enemy. But unity is not an option, it's a necessity. The time to act is now." The broadcast galvanized the coalition. Inspired by humanity's leadership and their own victories, member species began mobilizing reinforcements. Fleet Command issued orders for a full-scale deployment to the Helios cluster, marking a turning point in the war. As the coalition's fleet regrouped, Ward stood once more on the bridge of the Eternity's Wrath, his hands clasped tightly behind him as he gazed out at the stars, their light reflecting off the bridge's polished surfaces like scattered fragments of hope. The stars outside seemed brighter, their light cutting through the void like distant beacons of hope, as if the galaxy itself bore witness to their efforts and awaited humanity's next move. But Ward knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with peril. "This was just the beginning," he murmured to himself. "The galaxy isn't ready for what's coming. But we'll make them ready." Behind him, the crew worked with renewed vigor, their confidence bolstered by the day's triumphs. The Eternity's Wrath moved forward, a beacon of humanity's resilience and determination, leading the charge into the unknown. The coalition fleet was a sight to behold as it amassed in the Helios cluster. Ships from every corner of the galaxy converged, their unique designs a testament to the diversity of the coalition's member species. Frigates, cruisers and dreadnoughts orbited in carefully choreographed patterns, their hulls gleaming under the light of a nearby pulsar. At the center of this massive formation was the Eternity's Wrath, a beacon of power and determination. On the Supercarrier's bridge, Captain Ward stood alongside his officers, their expressions grim but resolute. The tactical display showed the swarm's forces regrouping, their endless numbers forming a blockade around the remaining outposts in the Helios cluster. This was the final stand, a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. "Status report," Ward ordered, his voice steady. "Fleet is in position," Commander Morozova replied. "Reinforcements from the Drazali and Zorathian fleets have bolstered our numbers, but the swarm's blockade remains impenetrable. They've fortified their positions with additional carrier-class vessels and planetary defenses." Ward's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic map. "Then we'll give them something they don't expect. Signal all ships to prepare for Phase 2 of the operation." The bridge buzzed with activity as orders were relayed across the fleet. Coalition ships shifted into new formations, their movements precise and coordinated. The plan was audacious, relying on humanity's unorthodox tactics to catch the swarm off guard. As the battle began, the void was once again filled with chaos. Swarm carriers launched wave after wave of drones, their sleek forms darting toward the coalition's lines. The Eternity's Wrath led the charge, its powerful weaponry carving through enemy ranks with surgical precision. Energy beams lanced through the darkness, igniting the swarm's vessels in brilliant explosions. "Enemy formations are shifting," Morozova reported. "They're adapting to our tactics." Ward nodded. "That's what we're counting on. Execute the feint." At his command, a portion of the coalition fleet broke away, simulating a retreat. The swarm, sensing an opportunity, pursued them, leaving their blockade vulnerable. It was a risky maneuver, but one that had been calculated down to the smallest detail. "Signal the flanking teams," Ward said. "It's time." From the shadows of the asteroid fields, hidden coalition strike groups emerged, their weapons primed and ready. They unleashed a devastating assault on the swarm's exposed flanks, catching the enemy off guard. The battlefield erupted in chaos as the coalition's forces pressed their advantage. Meanwhile, on the surface of Helios Prime, the battle raged in a different form. Ground forces, including human and coalition troops, fought to secure critical installations. Lieutenant Ramirez led his squad through the ruined streets of an abandoned colony, the sounds of combat echoing all around them. "We need to take out that anti-air emplacement," Ramirez said, pointing to a towering structure bristling with weaponry. "It's cutting down our air support." The squad moved with precision, using the rubble for cover as they advanced. Swarm drones swarmed the area, their chittering voices a constant threat. Ramirez signaled for his team to hold position as he analyzed the situation. "Jones, take your team and create a diversion. The rest of you follow me. We'll hit them from the side." The plan was executed flawlessly. As Jones's team drew the enemy's attention, Ramirez and the others infiltrated the emplacement, planting charges on its structural supports. The explosion that followed was deafening, sending debris and swarm drones flying. With the anti-air defenses neutralized, coalition gunships descended from the sky, turning the tide of the ground battle. Back in space, the swarm's forces were crumbling. The coalition's feint and flanking maneuver had broken their blockade, and the Eternity's Wrath spearheaded the final assault. Ward's voice echoed across the fleet as he issued the order. "All ships converge on the primary carrier. This ends now." The coalition's ships surged forward, their weapons focusing on the massive swarm carrier at the heart of the enemy fleet. The Eternity's Wrath unleashed a barrage of firepower, its energy cannons tearing through the carrier's defenses. The swarm carrier exploded in a brilliant flash, its destruction signaling the collapse of the enemy's coordination. Cheers erupted across the coalition fleet, but Ward remained composed. "Begin mop-up operations. Secure the cluster. We've won the battle, but the war isn't over." Hours later, as the coalition fleet regrouped, Ward addressed the leaders of the coalition in a holographic conference. His tone was measured but firm, his words carrying the weight of their shared victory. "Today we achieved what many thought was impossible. We stood together, united, and proved that even the greatest threats can be overcome when we trust in each other. But this victory came at a cost, and there is still much to be done. The swarm will return and we must be ready. Humanity has always thrived in the face of adversity, and now we stand with you as equals, as allies. Together we will secure a future for all our species." The conference ended with a renewed sense of purpose among the coalition's leaders. Humanity's return had not only turned the tide of the war but had also reignited the unity and hope that the galaxy desperately needed. As the Eternity's Wrath prepared to depart for its next mission, Ward stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the stars. The galaxy stretched before them, vast and filled with possibilities. Behind him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their confidence bolstered by the day's triumphs. "Captain," Commander Morozova said, stepping up beside him. "The crew is ready. What's our next move?" Ward smiled faintly. "We keep moving forward. There's a lot of galaxy left to save." The Eternity's Wrath surged into the void, its engines blazing as it led the coalition into a new era of hope and possibility. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, the victory in the Helios cluster became a symbol of what could be achieved through unity. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as architects of a stronger galaxy. Behind them, the scars of war began to heal, and ahead, the promise of peace and progress beckoned, waiting to be forged by the resilience and ingenuity that defined them all.